Welcome to the Sacred Healing Podcast, where the old is new, the ancient is innovative, and the forgotten is remembered. We believe that sacred healing is your birthright. Join us on each episode as we uniquely, authentically, and mystically dive into the bold and vulnerable life of many magical humans. From breath, spirituality, shadow work, and all things in the esoteric realm of healing, we don't leave any stone unturned on this bold journey of growth as we start to explore the remembrance of what it means to be human. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and let's get sacred. Today, I want to share with you all the delicious cacao with a K, ceremonial grade drinking chocolate. Cacao is one of my favorite brands of ceremonial grade cacao, and it's a delicious addition to my morning routine. Cacao is jam-packed with delicious nutrients that work with my body to stay energized and connected and focused. What I also love about cacao is that they are a nonprofit on a mission to protect the native heirloom strands of cacao in Peru and Guatemala by giving back to the farmers and communities that make it available for us. If you are interested in cacao with a K, go to the show notes and you will find a link for 10% off your first order, or simply by using the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all capital letters, at checkout. Hello, sacred humans. Thank you for being here. I need to be 1000% transparent with you guys and let you know that I have started creating a new foundation of abundance. And in that, I have a confession to make. I recorded this episode with Daniella almost 2.5 years ago. And then I never released it. And it fell into the dusty, crunchy, dark archives of my computer. And during that past time, I was in a place in my life where I had some really huge experiences and mind-blowing epic visions. And then I fell into a wave of unworthiness, not enoughness. And I went into a deep, shadowy period where the only way out was through. And it was really a journey back to self and back to the I amness of me. And so here I am coming back around and truly finding myself ready. But really, when are we truly ready? But being ready to say yes to the invitation of unleashing my magic into the world and knowing that the timing of this podcast is sacred. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the past couple years, it's the embodiment of the most sacred thing is what is. Something that I learned from Blue of Earth and Reverend Brianna Lynn. And sitting with this concept of the most sacred thing is what is essentially what led me to stop being afraid to share what's on my heart, no matter who's out there, no matter who might be judging through whatever positive or negative lens anyone can look at, because I am me. And that's the only thing I need to be in order to weave my magical unicorn healing medicine woman powers onto this earth grid. And so the most sacred thing is what is. And that is the sacred timing of unleashing this magic into the world. And to give you all more background, about 2.5 years ago, I went through many transformations, but one of the most beautiful evolutions was my initiation into being a breathwork practitioner. And on this podcast, Daniella and I dive into some of the science of somatic breathwork, the profound visions we've experienced, our connection to the elements, and also I share something that I've never shared before about someone who at the time I had not met, but now 2 years later have just met this person actually this past October in Sedona for a mind-blowing activation ceremony. And I can honestly say my life is 1 million times different, and I have gone through trillions of evolutions of me, and my beautiful guest, Daniella, has as well. I am so excited to not only illuminate and share her gifts with the world, but also simultaneously launch the deep cauldron of magic that has been brewing for many, many years. So with that, welcome to the Sacred Healing Podcast, where we start by traveling back in time years ago to a mind-blowing conversation with Daniella Viviana. Enjoy. Dude, cheers
with my giant mug.
Cheers to this conversation and getting together and chatting and connecting, just like feeling
Just like the old days around the fire, sharing stories.
yeah.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah, it does. So let's introduce ourselves, then we'll get into like meat and potatoes of how we met and how we connected, and then some really fun experiences that we've had.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Jessica, and I am really diving deep into self-exploration and learning and growth and serving and contributing back, and how I can raise the vibration and any little piece and bit and part that I can do in order to do that is really what I'm exploring these days. And that's a little bit about me. And this is the beautiful Daniella. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Daniella. I am from South Florida, born and raised. My background, I'm Colombian and Syrian, and it's such a salient part of who I am when people know me in person. I had a friend recently who we've got to know each other a little better over the years, and he was like, you know what's cool, Daniella? You're like actually Colombian, like Colombian culture, and you're like actually Syrian, like Syrian culture. And I was like, wow, I feel so seen, because I'm also super American. I'm American more than anything else. And all that aside, I am also like have been diving deep for the last 4 years. And I mean, from a young age, I was never like on the track of like a corporate career. I was always kind of like, I don't want to do it that way. I'm gonna rebel.
Yeah.
And then it switched from being, I don't want to work that way, to like, work is not the focus of my life anymore. And that's been huge and like a process to let go of. And in that process, I'm discovering more about myself, my gifts, the universe, like all of it. And yeah, so it kind of led me to where we met. I don't know if you want to get started on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you for that background. And I just learned a few things about you that I didn't even know too. So thank you for that. And I think both of our journeys really led us to a point where we wanted to explore a little bit more, not only in the realm of like what's possible, but going inward, not going outward, going inward. And so we both, for our own circumstances, got to be in a class together, a training together, something that I found through an organization called Fit for Service, run by Aubrey Marcus and Vailana and Eric and Caitlin and all the amazing coaches, Kyle. And they ended up doing a somatic breathwork experience at one of their core summits. And I've done somatic breathwork a few times, called by many different names, but that experience there with a group of people called Lucas and Hella was just like so profound, profound. And little did I know, this amazing man, Stephen, was lurking around through the room, but I didn't know him and hadn't met him.
He was there?
He was there. He was there. And I didn't meet him and I didn't know him. And I was later on a coaching call with Aubrey, and I had signed up for this training to learn how to be a practitioner of somatic breathwork, because it's just like impacted me so deeply at that event specifically. And I said, this is something that I want to facilitate. I want to bring this to other people. I want to be a part of this healing, this movement of healing, and be able to give this gift. And I felt very connected to it. And I knew that it was like inside my heart, like I just knew that it was for me. And so I'm asking Aubrey, like, hey, they've got like a year-long wait list for this teacher training. I don't want to wait that long. Like, I need to start knowing how to do this and delivering this magic. And I said, do you know anyone else? Do you know anyone else that does this? And he said, yeah, Stephen is one of the best. And I said, great, this is awesome. He's like, Caitlin's gone through his program. He's really wonderful. Like, you should go with Steven. So literally that day I signed up for Steven's breathwork class, which is where we end up meeting. And it was kind of funny because the universe was like playing games with me a little bit, because once I signed up for that, I had already paid, like I was plane tickets, everything ready. It was like 2 weeks before I was supposed to go. And a lot was happening in my personal life that was kind of like making me question the travel, because not only did I have to go to Phoenix, then after that I had to go to London for 2 weeks. And it was just pretty much a month being away from home. And there was a lot of things going on. So I was like, the universe is playing with me a little bit. And I was like, no, I'm doing this. This is my medicine. It's like, I need this for me. This is like self-healing work. And I get this email from Lucas and Hella, and it's like, we have a spot that opened up in our training for somatic breathwork. And I'm like, what? No, I'm like, I'm like, you're playing games with me right now. And I had to sit with it for a little while. Like I had to sit with it and say, like, do I want to go with these people that gave me this like beautiful experience? And they're like some of the best in the world. I mean, they're training celebrities and they're just very well known. Or do I go to this program that I committed to with Steven, who Aubrey also speaks really highly about, and isn't as well known maybe in that type of a community? And I just like sat with it and meditated with it, and Steven was the right answer. And I'm so glad and grateful that I went, because that leads us to like how we met.
Yeah. Wow, I had no clue all that happened. That's crazy.
Like I almost didn't even go. And then it's like, no, this was meant to happen. Like this was meant to be.
Yeah.
What was your experience just kind of getting this place?
I had a lot going on in my personal life too. I started in elementary school in 2019. I was both running it with my co-founders and like in a teaching role. I'm actually called a guide, so not a teacher, but a guide. And it was really weighing on me in all ways, like mind, body, spirit. And then after the first year, I went away to a month and I did a yoga teacher training there. And I came back so like connected to myself and like the earth. And I was like, I'm going to do this year differently. And then we get started, and one of my co-founders, her father, unfortunately was dying and she had to leave to go take care of him. And our other co-founder had another full-time job. So I was carrying the entire weight of like everything for months. And I became a shell of a human being. And then she came back, and even with her help, her father ended up passing. So she was not her full self. I just had been so burnt out. I was not my full self. And we came around to winter break, December. And I was like, you know what? I told my sister, I was like, there are two things that I want to do this winter break. I want to break out my new paddleboard that I had just gotten. And I want to try mushrooms for the first time. I had been studying plant ceremony for years, just through other people's stories. And I had really wanted to sit with ayahuasca. And I had tried when I was in Costa Rica on 3 different occasions, and it didn't work out. And I was like, you know what? That's for a reason. But for some reason, I felt really called to mushrooms. And between December and February, I tried like a couple different times, and it wasn't the experience I wanted. I wanted like a very ceremonial, like God encounter. And it ended up just being kind of more like, open your heart, loosey-goosey fun. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to do something to have that experience. Like I'm gonna have to set an intention and be serious and make a ceremony out of it. And I did. That was in February of this year, 2022. And I had such a profound, honestly, a journey home. Like it's called a trip. It was genuinely, I entered into my energy body. And I was able to connect to source and like, I can't even say receive information, because it was like I was experiencing the information. I'm sure folks who've experienced this before understand that. It's so hard to verbalize. And I received my soul's mission. And the next day I met with my co-founders, my partners, and they're also kind of on the path. So I was completely honest and I was like, look, guys, this is what happened. I know, why I'm here, and this ain't it. And they're like, okay, that's a lot, but let's start moving along. And so for the next 2 months, we were shifting responsibilities. We brought somebody in to take my day role. I trained her. And then on May 2nd, I flew out to Austin for a week, first week of May, just a few days to see friends. And it was like my nervous system just released. Like, and then the second week of May, one of my co-founders works for a new cruise line, and so he gifted me a cruise. It's like my going away party. I went with my sister, and that was another one where like anything outside and the sun and water like brings me back to myself. It was beautiful. And I am like a kind of a social butterfly. I'll walk into any room and like walk away with a real friend, not just like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. And every cruise line specifically, Virgin Voyages, they're amazing. They purposely take care of their crew in such a way that you can feel how happy they are. Like everybody wants to be there working. And it's a service industry. Like genuinely, some people are like,
yeah,
right, this sucks, Yes. But
Yes.
they're excited to serve you. Yeah. And I didn't even end up really making friends with other guests. All my friends were crew members, and like a genuine connection where they're like, if you're ever in Brazil, come stay in my house. If you're ever in South Africa, come stay in my house. If you're ever in Croatia, this guy. And I was like, wow, I missed connecting with people. Like I could feel my heart opening every week a little bit more, because that's my genuine nature. I'm like that when I'm myself. And when I'm not, I have this like heavy armor and I'm just closed off. So it was like those first 2 weeks were just opening me up. And then I come home for a couple of days, jump on a plane, fly out to Phoenix. And the way I had found this training was through a guy named Mike Salemi. I'm very much into like functional fitness, and he is like a kettlebell master. And so I've been following him for years. And he kind of walks the path between both fitness and like spiritual wellness, if you want to call it that. And so he did his training. He works with Jaggers, Steven, the founder of Somatic Breathwork. And he'd been posting about it for a while. And when I was deciding what, like, I knew I was leaving the school, but I was like, but what am I going to do? Without ever even practicing the somatic breathwork, like never experiencing it, I just knew. I was like, I'm going to do that thing that Mike did. And it was like, because I had allowed myself the space to be connected, I could receive that. And so I signed up, I paid, I booked my flights, all without ever experiencing it.
Oh my gosh. What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And then I arrived on site and I got to stay on property with a group of some other girls who were from out of town. And our connection like felt cosmic too. The things that we were able to like work through together, it was like questions I had from a week prior were answered by meeting this person. And then the breathwork itself was so powerful. We can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, let's get into that. I love how kind of everything just kind of happens for a reason, right? And that wasn't a big group of people. We were in like a very intimate group, and like you said, I came out with real friendships. Like we're here talking. We talked for like 2 hours the other night. It's like we're really connected, and that's the power of the communitas that this practice creates. But let's for those who are listening, maybe not even seeing us on video, but just listening, let's talk about what is somatic breathwork, what it even means. Let's talk about Big Bad Steven and Dad, whatever you want to call him. We also met his mom. I was like, oh my God.
I just told my sister that story last night.
His mom was so cute. I couldn't even handle it. So we just got really intimate with each other. But let's talk about somatic breathwork? And I want to kind of break it down, like break it deep down, because
So yeah, that was my favorite part of the entire
oh,
training, was Stephen's connection to etymology. The way that he breaks down language to like tune you into where things come from and why they are the way they are. So Soma.
absolutely, absolutely. And linguistics, the power of
Mhm.
language, the power of how you are phrasing words, and you know, even deeper than neuro-linguistic programming language, like even deeper than that, like what is the meaning behind the words and why are you using those words and what's the reason why you would use those words, got me thinking I need to be more mindful with the words that I use. I can't just start because that's sometimes I'm just like, nah, you know, word vomit all over the yay, word vomit all over the table. So yeah, it's part of our training that we went through is to be really mindful in
Mhm.
linguistics and language. So Soma, let's break down, what is somatic breathwork? Soma is Greek. The origin is of the word soma is Greek. It means body. And so soma is the body, or of the body. And if you go and you look up the actual definition of soma, which I have pulled up here,
Okay, perfect.
it's a biology noun, soma, or somas plural. It means the parts of an organism other than reproductive cells. It
Mm.
is the body as distinct from the soul, the mind, or the psyche. So soma is of the body
The
and
physical realm.
the physical realm. And when we talk about somatic breath work, we're talking about an entire embodiment experience that takes you out of your thinking mind and into your body's electrical network.
Mm.
So that is super powerful. I mean, even just that one bit of like what soma is in general is so powerful. And
And like for anyone who just heard all that and it sounds like mumbo jumbo, just like close your eyes and think of whatever activity it is that gets you in flow. Like if it's a sport, if it's dance, if it's art, anything physical where like your mind gets shut off and you're just in it, that is somatic. And we're just talking about somatic breath work, specifically through breath. It gets you out of your mind and in your body.
absolutely. And the reason behind somatic breathwork and why Stephen created, you know, this program and why we are practitioners is because it allows you to, through the breathwork, release any unneeded energy that is stuck within this network, which might be caused by repeated thoughts, repeated feelings, any old narratives that you might have, stories that you've created. And what the breathwork does is it assists you in discharging that through your body, discharging that out of your electrical network, out of your nervous system, out of your being,
Mm.
so that over time, any unresolved trauma or chronic stress, dysregulation, dis-ease, literally dis-ease in the body, can be released through
Yeah.
that. And we're talking about any type of stress, anything that happens in life, professional, personal. When you're holding on to that trauma, what the somatic breathwork does is helps you, assists you, because you are in control and in power, to release and hopefully, ideally, heal some of that trauma and that stress
Yeah.
through your nervous system, so that it's then imprinted on the body to be able to, in the future, when patterns start to repeat or come up, start to heal the emotional self so that your authentic self can emerge from that place. So
Yeah.
that is what the breath work does. um,
Can I share the example of the gazelle?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
for
So
sure.
yeah. So as Jessica was saying, somatic is of the body and it's a biological term. And before anything else, like our body is a biological being, just like an animal, right? We're part of the animal kingdom. And if you've ever seen or haven't seen a gazelle or any animal of prey being chased by a lion, if they're able to kind of get out of uh, their view and play dead, the lion won't want them anymore. It's all about the chase and like getting the animal. So they'll come sniff them around and walk off. And that gazelle was just in such a state of fight or flight. They're in their what's called the sympathetic nervous system, right? So they were flighting, and then they stayed still. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Then they're frozen, physically frozen, like they can be paralyzed, and their nervous system is like working through all that energy that was just coursing through their body. And then what happens is they start to shake it off, like almost like a seizure, and they'll make these noises. And the gazelle is not thinking about that. That is their body going through the process that it knows how to do to release stress, to release trauma, to release everything that just got built up during that event of stress. And then it'll stand up and walk off like nothing ever happened. And it can go back to its life and be the true essence of a gazelle. Look at a toddler, same thing. You take away your kid's ice cream and they're 2 years old, right? And you're like, no big deal, right? You can't have ice cream right now. I'm sorry, dude. But to them, it's a traumatic experience. And they start throwing this temper tantrum. And you're like, hey, stop yelling, stop screaming, stop crying, go sit in the timeout corner. But really what they're doing, they're not thinking, Mom, I'm going to make you hate me so bad that you're going to give me back that ice cream. They're not using their mind. It's just their body doing what it needs to do to release those feelings of betrayal, of that stress that the child is receiving in the moment. And they're flailing and they're making noise, they're screaming and they're crying, and crying literally like takes chemicals out of your eyes. They come out in your tears, your stress chemicals. Like their body knows what we're doing. And over time, we learn and we're socialized to turn off our instinctive evolutionary mechanisms, which is how, if you think of the body as a container, it gets more full and more full and more full of stress and sadness and anger and until you're so full that there's no space for your natural essence, for Daniella to come through, for Jessica to come through. So this release tactic is all about clearing out space, but also what I love about Stephen's work, it's not just clearing it out and then walking in back into your normal life, all vulnerable and ready to be filled by, your normal life. It's actually, okay, we're going to release and then we're going to repattern. Mm-hmm. And through verbal cueing and through, the second half of the breath work, we'll get into it. He moves you from your state of fight or flight into your state of rest and digest, and your body's safe and your nervous system, the electrical system gets, and then through this verbal cueing, through these questions, you get to decide, who is it that I want to be? Like, no, I don't want to be the stressed out person. I don't want to be this sad person. I don't want to be this angry person. Who do I want to be? And in that state, you're in such a connected point that you can actively, like, I don't know, plant the seeds so that when you walk out of that session, you are truly walking through your life in a different way. And when you do fill up that space, it's intentional and maybe not even necessarily thoughtful, like you're not actively thinking about it, but it's coming from a place of your true essence.
It's programmed. How do you want to fill up that space? How do you want to fill the space that you've just cleared? You can decide. You get to put the intention behind that. And it reminds me a little bit about, and we could do a whole nother segment on this, but it reminds me a little bit about TRE, which is like tension trauma release exercises, which gets your body in like a state of shaking, right? And they're exercises that are, safe and natural to cause a reflex and cause your body to shake out or vibrate or release any muscular tension.
Beautiful.
And it calms down the nervous system. So again, whole other topic, but kind of interrelated in that we're using the breath to create some sort of a release in the body, which can look different for everyone. And I want to stress that and can't stress that enough. Yeah. Even throughout our facilitator teacher training, whenever I've done breath work for myself, my eyes are closed. I'm in here. I'm in my body, I'm in my own space. I don't know what the heck's going on with other people. Yeah. In fact, could barely really even hear other people releasing during my own experience. I knew that there was yelling going on and crying in other people. I've experienced all spectrums of anything that comes up with somatic breathwork, especially the tetany, which we'll get into, the muscle spasming, and I've experienced sadness, but I've also experienced great joy and these beautiful visions that we'll talk about. But knowing that anything is normal in terms of a release. When we went through this facilitator training and I'm watching other people release, like,
wow.
damn, I've never had that happen. Like, what shit going on? Can I have a drink of that? Like, so fun. It's so fun to just be in witness and hold space for people that are going through their own type of release.
Yeah.
So maybe we should break down and talk about what types of release you might see or you might experience if you go to a somatic breathwork practice, because you and I are both practitioners.
Yeah.
We lead sessions, Zoom sessions and local sessions. Plug, reach out to us if you want any breath work. But let's talk about the release. Let's talk about what that can look like. And maybe you can choose a few and we can kind of break them down a little bit before we get into what our experiences have been through somatic breathwork.
I'll walk you through my first experience, which wasn't until I arrived at this training, because I went through the full spectrum.
I can't even believe that. That's like amazing to me. I love it.
Yeah. So our first day, we had like, I want to say 6 or 7 hours of lecture. And then Stephen, being, the grounded teacher that he is, was like, all right, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys about this. We're going to experience it. You're going to know for yourself exactly what I'm talking about. And so as a group, we all received a session. And at first I was kind of like, and I'm very open to this. So your first experience might not be so extreme. I'm just sharing so that you can see the wide variety of types of release. But I'm breathing at first. I'm like, all right, I'm breathing. And then I'm a very bubbly person. I know I've got, some grief inside. I expected to cry a lot. And we're breathing, and just maybe a couple minutes in, someone starts yelling in anger, and it unleashed this rage inside. I don't know what everybody else was hearing. I know everybody's in their own world, but I could have sworn I was the loudest voice in the room. And it was like several minutes of, it didn't even just feel like, oh, I'm yelling and I'm making a sound. I could feel the fire leaving my body. Like there was an actual energy release. And then we had great facilitators, obviously, at our training, and they would come over and be like, yeah, let it out. It's not yours. I'm like, no, it's not mine. Like, just, oh, I was so like, you're right, dude. Let me get this out. And I'm taking it off of me, like there's that physical release. And then after, I was just, wow, all that anger is gone. And what's often behind anger is sadness and grief. And I immediately started crying, but like in a beautiful way. And I was so thankful for the tears and for that type of release as well. And it's like, that was another one where when I was crying, I was just, taking it off. And I love the facilitation. It's just put it down. It's not yours. Take it off. I'm like, yes, like take it off. And then after the anger and the grief, it was so funny. It was so funny that I had been carrying all of that. And two things, carrying it as such a heavy weight, but also pretending that it wasn't there. Like when you walk through your daily life, you're not acknowledging all this stuff that's shoved down inside. And it was hilarious to me. And I couldn't stop laughing. It was just a moment of pure bliss and humor. And a facilitator joined me in laughing, which was like even more beautiful to get to share that. Like, yeah, it's funny. I'm like, I know it is. It is. And then I've been working through a lot of sacral energy for months. So it was like, once I worked through those emotions, I started getting this like surge of sexual energy coming through me. And I'm like, just kind of dancing around, and I experienced an orgasm in the breathwork.
Woo!
Which, yeah. So like, even
we're not making any promises here.
No promises.
No promises. I've never experienced that. That's amazing. Bow down.
Good for you though. That means you're letting it out elsewhere. That needed to come through. It needed to come through. And then I went through kind of like that was my first one, and it was a very extreme experience. And then we continued to do sessions throughout the rest of the weekend, and they were all a little more subdued. But it was like as I described my body, my container was filled to the brim. And the moment I just peeled open that can opener, it like all came out. And I was able to walk through. I'm so thankful we did that on the first day, because I was able to walk through the rest of the training in like a more grounded myself place.
Yeah. And for a lot of our listeners here, I want to give another analogy. Other than like, okay, if you don't, empty your own baggage that you've filled up with, or if you don't, another analogy, fill up your gas tank first, then you will not be able to serve others and not show up in the world in your best self. But for those that have like more of a science analytical mind, think of your mind having, millions of computer tabs open.
Yes.
And this breath work allows you to just like click X on all those tabs, clear them out, clear them out, clear them out. I'm preaching to the choir right now because I have at least 25 tabs open right now on my computer. So it's like a daily thing too. It's subconscious. So it helps you to kind of clear that out. And you don't necessarily need to know what trauma you're releasing. You don't need to know what it is, why it came
I didn't.
Yeah, it's just a release. And so you talked about anger, yelling, screaming. You talked about sadness, grief, which could look like crying, shaking.
Even just like I had a client recently who was just, and it was like, it's okay to feel.
Yeah. And you talked about laughing, you talked about laughter, joy, bliss, having the ability to laugh at yourself. And it's even proven through some cancer studies that cancer patients have improved by laughter, through laughter, because again, it's releasing disease in your body. And so this somatic breathwork is a circular connected breathing coupled with beautiful rhythmic music. Maybe it's drumming, maybe it's whatever the facilitator brings to the table there. And it basically produces this cathartic emotional release is what we're talking about, which again, anger, sadness, laughing, bliss, yelling, screaming, orgasm, whatever comes up for you, that's okay. That's okay. So everyone's experience is going to look very, very different. And we use the breath to basically engage our ability to heal and engage our ability to sweep out any of the defenses that we've built up, blockages, restrictions, anything that's holding you back from who you are and what you want to be in this world. And I want to talk a little bit about the container, because I've experienced breathwork in a very beautiful container and had a beautiful experience. And then also experienced breathwork in a container that maybe I didn't feel so safe in and wasn't able to drop in and didn't have pretty much any experience. It was just like, what is this? It's meditation. What am I doing here? And so I want to talk about the container a little bit, because I think it's very important that if you're going into any type of somatic breath work or, any type of intense hypno breath work, any type of breath work, any type of healing and spiritual healing in any capacity, even yoga, your container matters. It
for sure.
It really just like sets the stage for your entire experience. We, throughout our facilitation training, had the most beautiful container in the world. So we didn't have any problems, no issues. But if you are going somewhere, make sure it's very intentional with the container and how you feel about not only the facilitator that you're working with, but the actual container of the facility and the smells and the vibe in general. And you'll know if it doesn't feel right, because you'll just feel it. And I would say if you get that feeling like right before you're going to do breath work, ask yourself if it's genuine, like, I don't really want to do this breath work right now, I'm scared to do this breath work right now, or if it's actually I don't like the container and I don't feel safe here. Because we can get in our head too with like not wanting to do the work, because this is not, we're laughing, we're giggling, but like breath work is not
breath work.
Work, right? Thank you, Daniela. Yes, it's work. And like, I think it was Stephen or Fish who said this, but they're like, I'm never stoked to do breath work, like never stoked to do breath work. And I feel that way too. I'm like, oh God, look, I have to face this today. Like, okay, let's do it. And you kind of have to be in the right mindset and state to do that.
There are going to be periods in my life where I'm not in a place to look inward, and that's going to be okay. Like, just choose it when it's time.
For sure.
And another one about the containers, even the company that you're in. So I did a one-on-one session for a woman this week who was in her home, and her husband was home in the other room, separate. But at the end, she said, next time we do a session, I'm going to make sure I do it when he's out of the house, because I know that I didn't feel safe releasing more in case he might hear what was going on. So just being honest with yourself, like it might feel safer to go with a friend or a loved one, but if you don't feel comfortable, like really letting go of that control in front of somebody, give yourself the permission to try to experience it by yourself, whether it's in a group and you're with other people who, maybe strangers feel a little more safe, or a one-on-one, or whatever that looks like for you. Just pause and ask, how am I gonna give myself the permission to let go and to feel during this session?
100%. I'll share too, because it's funny now. I did a session a couple weeks ago. I was in London and I did a session for a small group, and I had never been to this space before. I'm not from London. They booked the space that they wanted to do this training in, not training, but the receive breathwork in. And I'd never been there before, but I looked it up online and I'm like, okay, it's a yoga studio. Like that works, like looks normal to me. We get there and it was not a normal yoga studio. And it was kind of just one of those like Airbnb spaces that you just rent, and it has a lockbox and you can go in. Cameras, because they want to know when you're coming and going, and no yoga mats, no anything.
Blankets, nothing.
Like a nothing room. It was a room, a hardwood floor room with mirrors. And so at that point I was like, okay, we got to get comfy in this container. Like, let's get comfortable. We could have gotten the most comfortable in the world, but nothing could stop the restaurant that was next door smells just coming in to the space. And it was just not the best container. And so again, I had no control over that container, but it did impact the experience that the group had. And that was something we talked about afterwards. We talked about the safety of the container, and maybe the next experience being somewhere where like, hey, it's going to be warm and fuzzy and comfy and all the things, so that you're not having to smell, shrimp fried rice, like right next door. And you're not like, man, I'm hungry right now. So yeah. And just want to be clear too, everything we're talking about is not medical advice. We are not doctors. Breathwork is intended as a growth experience for you to look inward, and it is not any substitute for psychotherapy in any way. And there's definitely contradictions to doing breathwork. So I encourage anyone who's listening to take their own personal journey, consult with whoever they need to consult with professionally in order to do a session with breathwork. And if your facilitator is not talking about contradictions in cardiovascular health or mental health before doing a session with you, I would have questions there. So yeah, definitely paying attention to who this is for, and I think it's for everyone. I do. I think it's for everyone, but you always have to make sure it's the right for you. Cool. Science. We did it. I would love to, I could talk about the science behind this for like hours and hours, but I want to talk about our experiences in
the breath
and like what came up, because you can have visions through this breath work. And Daniella and I have experienced some pretty intense visions, and also like visions that are like pretty connected in that we afterwards felt this like really great bond in our experiences of connecting to different elements and nature, and kind of getting clear on path, purpose, and what door to open next.
And that's actually how we became friends. Jessica was brave enough to share her experience. And like, I felt that deep in my soul because I'd had a similar experience. And so I approached her, and yeah, it kind of opened the doors to each other's mystical connections.
Yeah. And then we did a sound bowl healing, and I like felt you in the room. I was like, she was flying around up in there.
Yes, I was.
And you were on the opposite side of the room, I think, but I felt your essence in the room. And so, you know, we just had this really, really beautiful connection. But let's start with what the breathwork brought up for us. Let's start with what we've experienced. Do you want to share with everyone what you went through? I don't know if it's the first breathwork experience you want to share, or any breathwork experience that you feel comfortable sharing with people who might be listening.
So that first session where I had such an extreme release, I honestly had no conscious awareness of what I was releasing. At the end of it, that was my share. I was like, I just did so much and I don't know any of it. And it was so strange to me. And it wasn't until afterward with my roommates that we went to go have dinner, and I was sitting in the car on the drive there, and I felt like Raven from That's So Raven, where I just suddenly had like a vision of what it was that I'd been releasing. And it didn't answer all the questions, but like, you know, you might have those connections later on, which is why integration is huge. But in a later session, I had a really powerful moment and like reflection of myself. And I mean, I described how I became a shell of a human being during that year, but it's not something that's happening to me. It's me giving away my power. And during the breathwork session, I actually almost like let go of focusing on my own release and was receiving energy from the person releasing next to me. And in my head, it was like, wow, they're going through so much right now. Like, let me help her. And it knocked me to the ground. It literally made me collapse to the ground in the middle of the breathwork session. And then I had to like rebuild up my energy. And it was just a huge moment of reflection that I do that in real life all the time. I get to a really good place, like where I'm at right now, and then I'll start to give it all away. And then I question why I'm so broken. And while I shared that with the group, I realized, you know, she didn't even need me to receive what she was releasing. She's completely capable. And that's probably true for all the people in my life that I give my power away to as well. And you know, coming back from that session, I've changed the way that I'm going about. A huge part of my purpose in life is to nurture and care for people that I care about. But I'm doing it in such a way where I feel the exchange of unconditional love, and it's not depleting me at all. If anything, it's actually filling me up more. And so May was my like month of crazy, and I was all over the place. And then in June, I've just been like, wow, so full of love and life. And I think that was the same session where you had your element experience. If you want to jump into that.
Happy to.
Yeah.
We're going to get really, really deep in the depths. So thank you for sharing that, first of all. And it's beautiful how you were able to fill up that space with clarity on how you need to interact with people in your life, and your purpose on how you need to interact with people that you care about.
Yeah.
Which is one of the hardest things that we have to do in life in general.
Yeah.
Hello, sacred humans. Quickly, I want to share with you something I've added into my daily rituals that has me buzzing, and that is Rise Mushroom Coffee. Rise entered my life through my Instagram algorithm that obviously knows what products I like, and I gave it a try, and just wow, it has amazingly delicious flavor. Not only this, they also have a mushroom matcha powder. Phew, mind blown. And they're filled with superfoods and super mushrooms. What I like about Rise is that they use 100% organic ingredients, and their mushroom farms are located in California. If you've always wanted to try mushroom coffee but haven't yet pulled the trigger, this is your moment. And there is zero risk because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're interested in the deliciousness of Rise mushroom elixirs, head to the show notes and you will find a link for 20% off your first order. Or simply use the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all caps, at checkout. And now, let's get back to our amazing episode of the Sacred Healing Podcast.
So I had a vision during the breathwork experience that was all spectrums on the emotional scale. It was sadness, it was anger, it was happiness, it was like this Kali energy. It was all the things. And what I ended up coming away with was this strong feeling that I'm very much connected to the element of fire. And we've talked a little bit about this, you and I, just kind of on personal calls and things of that nature. I am an Aries, that is my zodiac sign, but your astrology is like so much deeper than just like, oh, you're a fire
your sun
sign.
Like,
yeah. And so
I'll do a chart reading for you later.
Yeah, I have to dive deeper into that, but that really wasn't part of what my vision was all about. My vision around the fire was more of the fire being a symbolized view of my self, my deepest desires, my passions. It's had to do with every type of rebirth that I've experienced in my life, and my resurrection, and death of things, but also rebirth of life in things. And so fire burns and destroys, but fire also builds, and fire needs a couple things. It needs oxygen to survive, which is essentially breath, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny that I realized that I am fire through the gathering of oxygen, because fire needs breath, fire needs oxygen to flame, and it also needs fuel, which I consider to be my own fuel that I would give the fire. And so through this vision, I started to see that I literally was fire. I wasn't Jessica anymore. I was fire. I was the fire of the entire planet. And that came with really, it came with really big responsibility that was very heavy. And it came with the pain of the destruction and the grief that has been caused by fire on this planet in general. Wildfires, fires that have destroyed families, ecosystems. I specifically was very connected to trees being burned down in my vision, and started to even smell the smells of cedar, and was very connected to the root systems of trees being desecrated by the heat and the flame. And so it started as a very powerful vision of, you're the fire, and it essentially is destructive. You are destructive. And so I was getting this kind of like negative story of destruction, and essentially that wove into the fire being a source of good as well, the fire being a source of light, a source of bright, a source of a thing that's brought change to our world and
the phoenix.
Yeah, it's kind of the phoenix. I didn't see phoenix necessarily in my visioning, but
I just mean like new life comes after.
Yeah, new life popping out from fire, and also less on the like physical scale of fire, I also saw fire as more of a spiritual awakening within people. And so I envisioned the world and envisioned almost like a mycelium root system underneath the earth. And then instead of like little mushrooms popping up, it was little fires, but it was fires that were being lit within human beings, within people, within animals, within mammals, to light a fire in them to bring change to the world in a positive light. And so I felt the weight and the heaviness and responsibility of the fire being a destroyer, and also the fire being a creator. And it was more a sense of that I am the actual fire, not that I was part of this system, but that I was almost like up here with puppet strings, being able to control what was happening with fire on the earth, specifically. So that's really heavy. So that there's that. And then it really weaved into, okay, well, if you're the fire, then you need to go on a quest, specifically a quest to go find the water and the earth and the air and the sound and the frequency and all the other elements that would need to complete a circle of, I don't know,
power, of energy.
Just
I don't know.
Yeah. And so I was envisioning, holding hands with people that represent those other elements. And the circle was not complete. And we in the circle knew that the circle wasn't complete. And there was a gap in our hands. We weren't holding some people's hands, and there was a gap in that circle. And we were on a quest to find the other people that are these elements of the earth so that we could complete the circle. And I don't think that I am the only fire. I think that there are many fires, and I think that there are many circles. But in this particular circumstance, I was the fire. The circle wasn't complete. We didn't have the air. We didn't have the earth. Like, we were trying to find the other people, but not in a stressful way. It was in a way that like they will come to this circle when the time is right. And it wasn't like a stressful situation. It was just like, they're not here yet. They haven't joined the party yet. We're all good. We're chilling. So that was all happening. And then my vision took me to a place where my visions never have taken me before, which is Egypt, which I found very just beautiful. Yeah, it was just really beautiful. I've never been there. I haven't really looked into Egypt recently, like learned about it in school, King Tut, all the things, but not truly, I haven't really truly dove into that culture. But what I saw in my vision is that Egypt had this beautiful water system, like a waterway. It was very lush and green and beautiful. And there were all these water systems, and there were a lot of people, and life was thriving. Baskets, canoes, all the things were happening. And I was sitting on top of the Sphinx in Egypt. Again, don't necessarily know why, how this came into being, and was feeling a sense of almost like superiority, like control, power, wisdom, knowledge. Like I was like high up looking down upon these people. They couldn't necessarily see that I was there, but I was there. And I was sitting there kind of just like in a meditative posture, legs crossed, sitting up straight, just right on top of that dude's head, Sphinx head, sitting on top, controlling what's going on. And I was talking to the sun, and I was talking to the constellations, and I was controlling the weather essentially. And what I did, don't know why, I haven't found the reason why I did this, but what I did in that moment was I completely destroyed that entire beautiful vision of waterways and greenery and society and people. And I said, nope, sorry. And I turned it all into desert, and I made it so that it wouldn't rain, and that there was no water, and there was only sun. There was only fire from the sun, fire everywhere, fire on the ground. Sorry, you're done. It's desert. And created this desert. And I was like, why would I do that? Like,
Yeah.
so like questioning myself. But it seemed like it was it was done from a place of wisdom, and it was done from a place of competence and knowledge, but I don't know why it happened. And so I kind of came out of that breathwork session with those experiences and just been like, okay, well, that wasn't clear at all. Thanks. Like
A lot of information to
yeah,
integrate.
it's a lot of information to download. And that was just in a, what do we do? Like a 60-minute session.
Yeah.
That was a lot of information. So I'm going to stop there, Anna, because I want you to ask any
questions.
questions.
I have a few things to share.
Yeah.
So number one, if anybody felt connected to that story with ancient Egypt and, you know, turning it into desert, and you haven't read The Alchemist, do that. I listened to it and I loved the storytelling as well, if anybody likes audiobooks. I also wanted to just touch in general, like if you've never had these types of like source connected visions, it might sound so like distant and far away. And that's what I was describing earlier, that I studied psychedelic experiences for like 2 or 3 years before I ever actually experienced one myself. And I started to think that I got it. And there is nothing that you can understand with your mind. I my entire life have been such an intellectual learner. And it wasn't until I physically connected to source and I was able to literally shut off the concept of Daniella. Like, we know ego as in you're prideful. That's not the ego that I'm talking about, but the ego is the actual mind and your sense of self as an individual being. I am Daniella. I have an ego. That's real. But I can also choose to say, hey, mind, I'll be back. I'm going to go explore in my soul for a little bit. And when you're in your soul, you're connected to that universal consciousness. And people have different names for it, source, God, consciousness, whatever it is, but you're able to connect across time. Time is not linear. You're able to connect across locations. You know, she's physically in Phoenix, Arizona, but she's in ancient Egypt. That meant like that long ago across the Atlantic, you know? And yeah, so super powerful, super beautiful. And there are different ways to get there. Like my first few experiences were with psychedelic mushrooms, but I was able to get there with my breath. Jessica was able to get her there with her breath. There are so many ways that you can choose to enter into a thoughtful practice of setting aside your mind, your ego for a little bit, and like sitting with your truest self and with the universe and exploring there. And then you're going to walk out with all this information, as Jessica just said, like, what do I do with this? And that's the part where you live in yourself. I am Daniella. She is Jessica. But we also have all of this that comes with us and how to like walk the path with it. So my first experience that I shared with Jessica when she talked about being the fire, that was similar, was I was shown by God, source, whatever you want to call it, how I am sound. And like it do you know in what's that old movie where it's like Christmas and the Scrooge goes to Christmas past, present, and future, and he's like brought along.
What's the name of that? It's Scrooge. It's just
Is it Scrooge?
Like, no, it's not Scrooge. It's we'll find the name.
We'll find it. But so he's being carried along by a ghost to the past, to the present, and to the future. And that's kind of what was happening. Source was carrying me along to this experience where it allowed me to be the frequency of sound. Like, have you ever seen when you put on a speaker water or sand and then you play music and it turns into all these beautiful geometric, like sacred patterns? I was that. And it showed me that we are constantly that. Like, for my matter to be organized in this way, it's all frequency. And so that I don't know that I got into the details with you, but that was what I shared with you. Just as you were fire, I was sound. And through the breath specifically, I haven't had as much of an elemental experience, but anytime I am using sacred mushrooms, I am extremely connected to the elements. I will genuinely communicate with the wind, with the trees, with the sun, as you said, with the moon. I had a really beautiful ceremony at night on the beach in this like untouched virgin beach on a peninsula in the Dominican Republic. And I was talking to the moon. I'm in love with the ocean. And this is my fire experience that I shared with you. There was one point where I was sitting in a circle talking to some people, and the fire, we were at a bonfire. It literally called me over. It's not saying anything out loud, but in my mind, it calls me over. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right. And I walk over. And if you imagine the bonfire, there are a bunch of logs, obviously sticking in, burning from the center. And there's this one log on my side where the inner part is burning on fire and the outer part is not. It's lit, like it's embering, but it's not on fire. And I get the invitation from the fire to grab an ember. And I didn't even quite, like, I was so in it. I was so trusting. This is the ember. I'm like, yeah, all right, I got it. It's in my hand. I had these exact nails. These are all my natural nails, except this broken one right here. I had to cut it because the tip melted off when I was holding that ember. So the fire was lit, right? Like there is proof there that something got burned, but not me. And then it invited me to make love. And so sitting on this burning log, not genuinely, right? But energetically, I'm sitting with it and we're sharing, making love.
Yeah. And making love in the way that like energetically, like to
like
actually make and be in love. And like, not all of that is like a sexual energy. That's
right.
more of like a
heart to heart
loving energy.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh wow, like I feel you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then afterward, I had a whole other experience where I was shown my purpose on a grander scale. And I've had instances where I'm shown my purpose, and every time I get a little more information. It's like, okay, you've done a little more work, you're ready for your next assignment. And prior to this, I received a lot of messaging about how I'm still living. It was in the structure of kingdoms for whatever reason, and that I'm still living as a girl rather than a woman, and it was painting me as a princess rather than a queen, but that the queendomhood is waiting for me to step into it. And I kind of moved through that during that month of May when I was in Arizona with you all, when I was in these other places. And so by the time that I was participating in this ceremony, it was like, okay, you're stepping into your queendomhood, you're ready for your next assignment. And it showed me like my purpose in healing the greater divine feminine. And I don't mean feminine like female, but rather the two opposing energies of dark and light, yin and yang. There are two distinct energies, and we've all got both of them. That's why yin and yang has the white and the black circle in it, in each piece. But yeah, so I am meant to be here as a transmuter. If you think about, there was that Dr. Seuss book where they called niches. Some people had a star and some people didn't have a star, and they would go into this machine and pop out either with or without the star.
Yeah.
I'm that machine. Like my purpose here for Daniella is for people's pain to come through me and come out the other side alchemized, so that they have more space to be themselves, which is like right in line with this breathwork training that we're doing. But so
I haven't thought of that book in so long, by the way,
funny?
until this very conversation. Like, oh my God, I have to go back to that and see what's going on there.
My kids, Dr. Seuss for like a hot month this school year. Sneeches, they're called, sneeches. But yeah, so like I've had moments where I am completely, ego off and I'm connected to source, where I will think of somebody and I'm actively transmuting their pain. I'm thinking of, little Johnny, who I grew up with, and how I know that he's had a hard life because his parents got divorced, and then his mom was like, not emotionally available. And then I'm crying. But as I'm crying, it's not just like, oh, tears are coming out and I feel sad. It's not that. It's his pain. Just by me connecting to it, I'm in the network, right? I'm in source. I can tap into it. Like, it comes in me and it comes out. And so that night of that ceremony, I had so many instances where, like I said, I'm a social butterfly. I have a ton of like true, genuine friends. And I'm very connected to people's experiences. It's not just like, oh, we want to hang out. It's like, what's going on in your life. And yeah, so greater feminine helping to transmute pain. And then I got a message about my parents meeting for the explicit reason of having me to merge the energies of Colombia and Syria. Like, I don't know how many people are on board, but each land has its own spirit, just like we do. And for whatever reason, Colombia and Syria were meant to come together and like create this being that can transmute pain. And then, even more narrow, I tapped into my maternal lineage. And my mother came to me, my grandmother, some of my aunts, some of their aunts, people who I know by name, but I don't know really anything about their lives. And I knew all of these like traumatic events, for everything from, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of it that happened to the feminine in my maternal lineage. And it was like, as I was getting these visions of these terrible things happening to them, I'm also sitting under the shower at this point, and water's a cleansing agent energetically. So I'm in the shower, I'm sitting on the ground, and I'm like, oh God, it sucks to experience this. Like, I don't want to know that happened to, somebody that I care about. And, but it's coming through me. I'm just experiencing it, it's getting washed away. And the most powerful one was actually somebody in my family has cancer for like the third or fourth time now. And I'm in the shower and I'm brushing my hair, and my hair is falling out in clumps to the point that my hand is so full. I'm like, do I have any hair left on my head? And I'm literally touching it. And I look up and I'm like, God, what's going on? And it says, that's her cancer. Keep brushing. I was like, oh my God. And so I'm brushing, and it got to a point where I just knew, like, there's a connection there, like, okay, you're done. And we're in the jungle on this like remote area of DR. And so the shower's like, it's like a little beach villa. So the shower's open, and I toss out this ball of hair, and I was like, that was the tumor. And I come home, I tell my mom the story. She's a little connected and mystical too. And she's like, we have to call her. We call her. I tell her the story. She says that day she received like an energetic healing from somebody in the Seminole tribe that does, I don't know exactly what to call it. I guess kind of an equivalent of Reiki, but whatever it is in their culture. And the following morning, she woke up and had a period. She hasn't had any of her reproductive system for years. They were taken out on an earlier bout with cancer. And that normally she would be scared by that, but she knew that it was cleansing. And so we all started crying. And I don't know. Yeah. I guess all that to say that when you like clear the crap out of the way, and you can connect to source, whatever your purpose is in life, like there's magic, like energy is magic, and you can connect to that and make it happen.
Yes. Like, to sum up everything you said and everything I just said, yes, absolutely. And also, my cat came over and was like meowing at me. I'm on mute because I'm like, really, dude, is this the time during my podcast? It seems to be that's like the only time he wants to do it. But he
They're
knows.
connected.
he knows when there's like really good energy going on. And so I feel like he's like really into this conversation. He's on me right now. He won't
I have my cheetah pants on.
for him. Yeah. He's like very much connected to this conversation right now.
Beautiful. Hey dude, what's your name?
His name is Floyd. But yeah, it's funny because like he's very energetically connected to like my mood, emotions, all the things. Like if I'm sad, he knows. If I'm upset, he knows. Like he's also really he's out in nature, so he's very connected to nature too. But it's just weird that he came over right when you were telling this story, and I'm like, what do you know that I don't know? You know, dude.
You got to breathe with him later.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of just like brings this whole kind of sense around to everyone's experience with somatic breathwork and somatic work in general, like body work in general, mind work in general is going to be different. But I really want to kind of like double click on our connection to the elements in general, because I've also felt like a really deep connection with wind before, and with water, and but like had this really, really deep vision that I am fire. And you've had this really wonderful connection with sound, but also had these other experiences with water and with fire and, you know, the planets as well. And so I kind of want to double click on like the symbolism of those kind of elements in general as clearing elements and purifying elements in their own right. Like the fire will burn, but then it's a rebirth, right? The water might wash things away or cleanse things away, and then it leaves you cleansed and clear. You know, like the elements, the wind can wisp things off of your skin if you stand there and like let it do its job. So they're very powerful in terms of like a symbolic way, but also the general feeling of being that is, I think, a little bit different than just the symbolism of, okay, I get it, fire, it's the symbol fire, it means this, or like, oh, sound, I get it, it means this. But how does it feel for you to, or what is the like significance, if you know, of being the sound? How are you showing up in the world to like be in that frequency?
I don't think I've sat with it enough, but I studied Ayurveda last summer, and you know, everything was taught to me as a foundation, like the core belief. Ayurveda is the old medicine from India, and it's basically like food medicine, but everything is based on the core belief that there are 5 elements, and everything in this world is some formula of those 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether or space. And I got that, like I said, intellectually. I'm a great thought student, but it wasn't until, I experienced it that I was like, okay, I get it. When they say that you are facing redness and they're going to heal that because you have too much fire element in your body, and we're going to up the earth and the water to balance it out, and you're going to have certain herbs or certain foods that are more energetically water or more energetically earth. I understood the concept of balance, like mathematically, but you are genuinely embodying these elements, and you genuinely may have too much fire at a certain point. And I keep saying have because that's how it was taught to me in Ayurveda, but I'm realizing now it's more about your being. When you eat something, it becomes part of your body. Your body transmutes it into you. And that's why like the things that you put into your body are so important. And that's not just food. That's also like who you're around and the energy that you're choosing to eat. And your diet is what they call it. Your diet of people, of like the activities you partake in, of obviously food and drink, but like diet across the board.
Your professional career.
Your professional career.
Everything that you consume into your body through your skin, through your mouth, through whatever, sexually, whatever you're putting into your body will assimilate and digest, and that is who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love that. But as far as like embodying sound and frequency, I I know that a big part of my gift is like showing up in a very inviting way. I don't know how to say it without sounding narcissistic, but like I walk in a room and people enjoy being in my presence and being connected to me. And like a huge part of my life is seeing people. I have such a large web and network. And I can say, this guy over here, I just met 2 days ago in the parking lot at my gym, find out he's an amazing artist. And I have a friend specifically with anime. I have a friend who works in the fitness world and is also very into anime. And this guy like needs some money right now, and this guy needs some artwork. So I am going to hire him to make art for him, and it's going to elevate both of their like career paths, right? And
Connector. You are the connection piece between.
yeah, and I think that is an embodiment of sound and frequency.
Yes, you're hearing what needs. You're hearing the needs of two different beings.
Yeah.
Through sound, frequency, whatever you want to call it, and you're connecting. You're putting those connections, like you're connecting the wire.
Yeah,
saying, okay.
and sound travels in a way that is almost, it's not non-physical, but it almost is. And so I have, these friends that live across the world, and I can connect them to people over here, and they'll go make their own magic. I'm not even involved in it, but just me doing that, the way that like I'm listening to Frank Ocean's Channel Orange album from, I just realized 10 years ago. I was in 11th grade when this came out. And he's able to connect me to memories, experiences, people. Like sound is a connector. And I think that's where I need to sit with it more and explore it more.
And sound waves can move at different speeds within solids, liquids, gases, within any state of matter. And so there can be different movements of that frequency of sound through whatever matter that you're moving through, which could mean you were connected to a liquid or the water through sound, or you were connected to the gases from the fire through the sound, because
you're blowing my mind right now.
because they travel at a different frequency.
Yeah.
They travel at faster and warmer liquids compared to colder ones. So you could, figure out the power of your sound to use, obviously in a positive way, because knowledge is power. When you talk about your gifts and when you talk about your genius and why you're here on this earth, that could determine how you're utilizing that and speaking back to that frequency.
Yeah, the same way I was talking about the elements being like the foundation of Ayurveda, I've studied astrology in a way where like it's not horoscopes, it's the alchemy of the elements.
Two things I wrote down here that I wanted to touch on too.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell you this in our last conversation. But when I was getting all of those visions of fire and like the element of fire and being fire, I think what I didn't think about was going back to the intention that I'd set for that actual container and where all those visions came from. Because in other sessions, my intention has been not very pointed, broad, didn't really know why I was there, knew I wanted healing, but it's like, it was too broad for me specifically. I think other people can go into breathwork with the intention of healing, but for me, it wasn't specific enough. So I wasn't receiving what I needed to receive. When I went in with healing, I was receiving beautiful visions of my grandmother and like these things that were really cool and cute and helpful. And I was connected to something that wasn't me, but I didn't really get I wasn't getting a clear answer because I wasn't asking a good question.
Yeah.
And so the intention that I went into was very specific when I saw that I was the fire. And the question that I asked, the one word was enchantment. And I think I spoke it out loud. So I'm not sure if you remember that, but my word was enchantment. And the intention or the question around that word was that I've always known that there's something, and I wanted to know what the source of that was and why I feel why I feel enchanting, why I feel an attachment to enchantment. And then I got all that fire vision. And so it was a very specific, like narrow ask that I had for the breathwork session. And what I got out of it was something I had no idea was going to come out of it. So thinking back to like, oh, that was the intention for the container. Of course you got better answers.
Yeah.
because your intention was good. So maybe that's something for people to go into breathwork with, like, go in with a really clear and specific intention.
Yeah, your intention is so powerful.
Yeah, it sets the container, like going back to that, the safety of the container.
Not to keep bringing it back to mushrooms because we're talking about breath work, but when
back.
I said I'd like tried a few times, it wasn't until I set an intention that is all about source that I had that first God experience. Yeah. And also, just to bring it back to the beginning, my intention for the first breathwork session was pleasure. Maybe that's why.
You want to feel pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, here you go.
It happened.
That's very specific intention. And it's all about vibrations too. I think what we're talking about is frequency and sound and intention, and everything is vibration, even, you know, the element of fire, sound, frequency, everything is vibration. And when we vibrate correctly, we can vibrate higher, and we have to clear out the old. We have to clear out what doesn't serve, the dis-ease, so that we can vibrate higher. And really that's what the somatic breathwork is all about. And one other thing that we talked about was the other person that I saw in my vision, which I'd been really scared to talk about because
let's do it.
Well, it's just weird because I don't know this person, and
you do, just not in this life.
I don't know this person in this life. And I felt this sense of like, oh, this is just the beginning of knowing this person. This is the beginning of what you were unaware of, and it's just come to the surface. Now you do know this person, but like, what are you going to do with that information? And I got a clear sense that like, it cannot be forced. Like meeting this person cannot be forced. And I'm nothing like this person in that I don't remember my past life. I don't remember Atlantis. I don't remember that stuff yet. I'll say yet because I don't want to say can't. I want to say yet. But this beautiful creator, Matthias de Stefano, I think I'm saying his name right.
Matthias de Stefano.
I got you. Yeah. Is he Colombian? What is? No,
he's from Argentina.
Argentinian. Okay. In this life.
But
in past lives, he's
from Cam.
knowing about and being from Atlantis, being from Egypt, and seeing all these lifetimes. I have only consumed like a small portion of his content. Like I've seen some of the interviews he's done on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. I have not watched any of his other content on Gaia, which I know people have. I have not watched his own, like, the only like vision I have of this person is like, I think one podcast that I watched from Aubrey.
I was going to say Holding the Hands.
Yes. Oh, we haven't talked about Tetany yet. That reminds me of that. Let me write that down. And so the vision that I had in my fire element, I guess, experience, whatever vibration, whatever you want to call it, through the breath work, was that I was holding hands with one person to the left of me who I did not know. I did not know who that person was, but I was holding hands with them. On the other side, my right hand was out and there was nobody holding my right hand. There was a gap. We were looking for that person. And then directly across from me in this circle was Matthias de Stefano. And and Matthias was there. And again, we were all like really chill. Like nobody was like needing or wanting for anything. We were all just like, cool, we're chilling in our circle. Like we're here and we're just like, you know, holding it down, waiting on the rest of them to show up. And like, I had a sense that like I had just shown up to the party. Like I was like, okay, I'm here now. Like, I see you. Gotcha. and that's all I know. And that's all I know. And I know you and I talked about we're talking about, because I have gone to Aubrey Marcus's events before, and the upcoming event, Arcadia, he's going to that event and he's going to be a speaker. That event did not call me. That event did not like spiritually call me. And I think it's an amazing vision, amazing event. You know, Aubrey, of course, wants a lot of alumni to go. I, for personal reasons, can't make that date. And there's a lot of other things going on. I know it's even donation based, so it's not even financial. So it's just one of those things. But I also felt this like deep in my heart, like that is not the place that you're going to meet that person. And so you're not going to that event. Like that's not where you're meeting that person. And so I know that I'll meet that man, but it's just not there. It'll be at some point. And I don't know why he was in my vision. It's just not somebody that I consciously think about. Yeah. Obviously, now that I've had that vision, I've been going and trying to consume some of his content, because I'm like, well, why did this person come to me? Yeah. What was the like meaning behind it? And I haven't found that, but I think it was kind of cool. And I wanted to call it out because it's so weird. It's so weird. And I wanted to share it. I don't know.
It's so cool. It's weird when you're in your Jessica self and you think of this guy who's like a whole person with a whole life that you've never met. But like, yeah, when we're inside, you are connected.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like I was connected to him in like a very, very deep sense. But again, like,
because fire and water are balanced. He's water. Oh yeah, for you folks, he's water. And
he's water. Everyone, he's water. He really connects deeply with the element of water. And it's been said that he has gone to Egypt and he's brought rain, and
it makes it rain.
He makes it rain. He's been to events and he makes it rain. I have not experienced this from him. I'm like your biggest skeptic. And so I listen with open arms, and I love his vibe and his energy, but I don't know him and I don't know really what it's all about and what he's experienced. And I'd love to hear more. But
let me paint that picture a little differently, just for any skeptics. He's not like, I'm going to make it rain. It's different.
Yeah. I think he has a real soul mission, and I think he has a journey of, he's obviously been on his own journey of remembering past lives and remembering how he's lived, and I even think that he's mentioned he was a woman in a past life, like, and that our souls have no gender and no like bias towards that, and he's remembered like thousands and thousands of years, and his journey began then, and maybe some of ours have too, but he can actually remember that, which is really just totally interesting. But also you could be sitting here and being like, hell no, that's not a thing that happens. Like no one remembers their past life, and maybe you don't even believe that that's even a thing, and that's cool too. But I think it's just kind of groundbreaking to see that person, not know really a lot about them, and then dive deeper into who they are and what they represent. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like this man is representing water, and I'm over here like talking all about fire, because that's what I've been seeing and that's what I've been feeling. And I've always felt deeply like rooted and connected to fire. Like, and now I'm getting all of these like downloads from when I was like a young kid, or like how comfortable I've always felt with fire. And even in like, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar like 4 or 5 years ago, and he does the fire walk, which is like when you walk across like embers of fire, and everyone can do it, because if you believe that you can do it, you can do it. You can. And it was just one of those things where I was like, why are we doing this? Like, I'll walk embers, like this is no big deal. And people were like freaking out about it. What? I'm like, you just walk across them. Like, it seems like people do it all the time. So I just felt like I've always felt like very much like a connection and a power and a strength around fire, and have been, again, just like getting downloads from my younger self to be like, oh yeah, like you already knew that. Already knew.
You reminded me what I was trying to remember earlier.
Let's talk about it.
So my studies of the elements have led me to understand astrology for what it really is. And it's just the alchemy of the elements coming together in a certain way that make you embody physically in this realm. We're all connected up here. We all have a soul, but in this moment, I am Daniella. And my chart is so strongly Libra. my main sign, my sun sign. I'm a Libra, but it's like all through there. And so I'm very heavily air, which I could take to be connected to sound and like the carrying of sound.
Yeah.
And then Libra specifically is not just air. So air is a very intellectual sign. It carries knowledge. They're very social, big learners. And then Libra specifically is really connected to love and balance and justice. And those are like some key cornerstone philosophies and values and energies and feelings that just keep coming up as I get more connected to source. I just remembered it, so I wanted to drop it.
I really love that. And I think, and I know we're almost coming up at time here too. It's like crazy that we've been,
I know.
I could talk for 3 more hours about this
Same.
stuff days in a row. I think, and we could go on a whole nother road, like open up a whole nother door around astrology and how that might interweave and connect into what we're talking about too. But I think we've shared some beautiful stories. I want to bring it back around to if people have felt anything or have questions for us or are like, what are they talking about? We will provide how to get in touch with us in the show notes so that you guys can all reach out to us and feel all the feels. And if you want to schedule a session, whether it's a private one-on-one session, a group session, a public group session, a private group session, we do all the things as far as I know. All the things.
I'm working on some really cool stuff down in Florida too. So connecting with our practitioners, and that'll be coming.
Yeah. And I'm going to have you share all your info and kind of how people can get in touch with you and all the things. But I did have on my notes that I want to bring it back around to the science real quick. Because we did not touch on tetany. And I think that that's one of the things that it may come up for people when you're experiencing some sort of a release of yelling, screaming, crying, happiness, orgasm, bliss, laughing, all the things. Some people experience tetany. I experienced tetany. Every single time I've done breath work, I've gotten tetany pretty bad. Tetany is a muscle spasm. And so you might experience through the oxidization of breath coming into your brain and out of your extremities, you may experience cramping in your hands. Sometimes your hands will clamp over. I call them T-Rex arms. Sometimes you'll feel it in your feet. Tingling around your mouth, maybe some sort of a muscle spasm around your mouth, your jaw, your nose, you can feel tingling, and it's completely normal in breathwork. And just know that your facilitator will and is trained to help guide you through whatever that might look like for you. But stay in it, feel it more, and keep going deep into the breath. And of course, obviously, your own body and you are in control of breath work. And the cool thing about breath work is that it's not necessarily like doing a mushroom trip or an ayahuasca journey, and that
you're in it.
Actually, you can turn the dial up or down with your breath because you are in control, which is
you can literally slow it down.
Absolutely. And you could just say, I'm done for today. I'm going to turn it off. And in one of our sessions, I released for about 15 minutes out of a 60-minute session, and everyone went back into more rounds of breath work, and I turned it off. And I just laid there because that was what worked for me that day and in that moment. And so I think that I just wanted to say that because tetany can be the result of many different things. Like maybe you get cramping from like electrolyte imbalances, things like that. Like if you're used to cramping, you might be used to it. But if you're not used to it and you do breath work and then you get tetany, it's pretty shocking. So just kind of throwing that out there from a scientific standpoint, that is normal, and your facilitator should be able to walk you through it. But that being said, all of the like juicy goodness that we talked about today, excuse me.
We went deep.
I went deep. I hope you guys are able to get at least one little nugget out of everything that we've been saying. But Danielle, I'll let you shout out where people can find you.
Honestly, the best place right now would probably be Instagram. My handle, it'll be in the show notes. It's Daniella.Viviana. my first and last name. And I'm working on getting together, my website and all that goodness. But I have my foot in a few things right now. So I'm doing this breath work. I'm also running Adventure Retreat. I'm co-hosting with a team of amazing practitioners in different realms. There's fitness, there's yoga. We have a psychedelic facilitator. We have the most amazing cook. We have a photographer. Our team is honestly rock stars. And what we do is that this is kind of like mindset coaching through adventure vacations. And so we're going to take you out of your comfort zone. We're going to take you to the jungle, and it's not going to be like, this comfy AC fluffy room, but the activities that we have scheduled will challenge you to get out of your comfort zone and meet new people and do different kinds of activities. And also, like, they bring you back to the cornerstones of wellness, of movement, of breath, of community, of good food, of good air. We're in such a pure physical location. The sun, like all of it, all together. And so our next retreat is going to be Labor Day weekend, from September 1st to the 5th at that same location I talked about, Samaná in Dominican Republic. You can either find that information on my Instagram or at Adventure Retreat.
I love that. Can you spell out your Instagram for people so that they go to the right page?
Yep, it's at DANIELLA VIVIANA.
Awesome. That retreat sounds so refreshing and amazing.
You got to come. If not this one, in the future. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We will have to talk about that offline.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for coming on today and chatting. And it's always good to just talk with a friend about something that's so important for the world.
And vulnerable.
Yes.
So I'm so proud that we can do this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, me too. And if you guys are interested in sessions, please reach out to Daniella. I have seen firsthand that her gifts are magic. And I'm excited that she's bringing it to the world. I'm excited that I'm bringing it to the world.
Likewise.
And thank you guys for listening.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.